Good evening, everyone. You know, we've been talking about a lot of interesting things today. We've talked about different ideas. We've talked about different initiatives. We've talked about things that people wish to do. We've talked about things that people have achieved. But when we talk about all these things, there's one underlying issue, which is freedom. We have the freedom to do this. We have the freedom to think. We have the freedom to make a change. We have a freedom to move. We have a freedom to go on doing what we want to do. And that's something that enables us to achieve, even in terms of an idea. So before I start, I want you to think about something. What if this freedom is taken away from you? What if the people sitting in this room, you were told that you are to sit in this room, you're not allowed to leave this room, you're not allowed to walk out of this room? Just think about that when I continue my presentation, because what I want to talk to you about is a group of people, 1.8 million people, that are not allowed to leave their premises. They're not allowed to pursue their dreams. And out of these 1.8 million people, 50% are below the age of 18. This is the situation in Gaza currently, that for the last 5 years, there's been a blockade that has been implemented in Gaza, restricting people from leaving Gaza or for items, relief items, and other items to even enter Gaza. And this is how I'd like to start this presentation. I'd like to take you back to December 27th, 2008. And I have a friend here in the audience who's currently here who called me on that day. And he said to me, "Do you know that there's an attack on Gaza?" I said, "No, I haven't heard about it, but that's nothing new." But he said, "No, this is serious." So I went home and I turned on my internet, and the images that I saw will probably stay with me for the rest of my life. I saw dead bodies, I saw children, I saw mothers wailing, and I saw infrastructure being destroyed. Basically what it was Operation Castlet being unleashed. Repetitively what was being seen, and I was thinking that, okay, this is going to go on for a day, it's going to go on for 2 days, but this thing went on for 2 weeks. Day after day, what we saw were images of houses being destroyed, schools being destroyed, hospitals being hit, dead children, dead fathers, dead mothers, dead bodies everywhere. But one underlying thing that was present was the systematic targeting of educational institutes. That one of the things that when you read about Palestinian history, or you think about or you talk about the people of Gaza, one of the things that they've held on to is education. This is something, and Palestinians would tell you that this is one weapon they have against the occupation. And what we saw in Operation Castlet is that weapon, or that determination to pursue education, being targeted. School children, you know, that was the most difficult thing to see, young people dying. Schools being hit, universities being hit, and there's tons and tons of data. I mean, you can just Google that and you'll find it. But what I'll take you to are some very basic facts resulting from Operation Castlet. Education institutes destroyed 250, homes destroyed 50,000, hospitals hit 15, civilian death 1,600 over a period of 2 weeks. Out of these 1,600, 352 were young people, primarily children. So living in Qatar, being part of Education City, being surrounded by young people, you know, we felt very disillusioned that what is it that we can do? Yes, there were marches that were organized, there were lectures, people talked about different things, but you know, what we were really concerned about, and as we saw, being within the education, that the infrastructure of education is being targeted in Gaza. And this is what we wanted to do with Fakhoora, is basically we wanted to advocate for the protection of education in Gaza. And what we felt, or the students felt, is students will not have access to education, quality education, until and unless the blockade is lifted. So primarily, Fakhoora was launched. There was a lot of information gap that we felt, that within the Arab world, within the Muslim world, people know what's happening in Gaza. People know what's happening in Palestine. But that real information gap is present within the West. And really, education, as I said earlier, is the key thing. That you take away, I mean, many of us are students here. You know, if we take away the right for you to educate yourself, what is it there for you to look forward to? You know, we talk about all kinds of things. We talk about extremism. We talk about, you know, all kinds of new terminologies that have come into existence. But, you know, one thing that keeps generations and young people going is the idea or the concept where they can think of a brighter future. And what we wanted to do is basically have young people from Gaza tell that story. That what is it like to be a young person living in Gaza? So we initiated a program by which we wanted to use technology to tell a story. We wanted to use social media. And so that's something that we are currently doing, is we're having students from Gaza tell their stories to other students in the US, in the UK, to university students, so that the people on the other side can understand what it means to be a student in Gaza. So one of the things which Fakhoora initially did was launch a website, fakhoora.org. And basically this became, or this currently is, the main communication hub, where students from Gaza, even some students from Qatar, as well as students from US, UK, they communicate. Some of the key things that are present on this website, and something we invested in, was to develop a database of all the children that were killed. Close to 400 children were killed, and not just their names, but actually who they were. So they're not just numbers. So who they were, how old were they, how were they killed, how did they die, how did they live. So it becomes real. So that information was present on our website and still is. There's ways of you know, we wanted to use arts, we wanted to use literature, different projects related to that. So for example, one of the projects we're currently working on is an art competition in the UK where school children are being asked to develop art installations or artwork that are focused on items that are not allowed inside Gaza. So for example, ink, paper, tables, chairs, pasta, shoelaces. These are all items that are not allowed inside Gaza. So really using creative ways by which people can be educated on the issues around the blockade. Now, when we look at sort of this whole aspect of storytelling and you know, what we're defining as theory of social change, what we want to do basically is we want to use three things, which is passion, public awareness, and pressure. That what we're saying is we want students to be passionate and to be able to tell the story, to disseminate information. We want public awareness. We want the people to know in the West that what is happening, because there's an information gap. You know, why do, you know, there's this whole notion of why are they against us? It's nobody's against anybody, it's just a situation, it's just a circumstance. So John or Derek or Alice living in the West can understand, you know, what kind of a life Muhammad or Aisha or Saira, they're living in Gaza. So this information is being exchanged. What is important also is Fakhoora, one of the 4 key areas that we're focusing on are basically a scholarship program. That's beyond just the advocacy work that we're doing. So basically what we're doing is we're advocating for something, which is lifting of the blockade through students, through educational institutes, but we also have physical field programs on the ground, which basically is a scholarship program that every year we're awarding 100 scholarships for higher education for students to study within Gaza. And this scholarship program is not just financial aid. Our scholarship program is geared towards training young people in leadership, training them in media, training them to articulate their cause, because that's another information gap that we feel people from Gaza, young people living in Palestine, needs to develop. They need to develop a narrative to be able to articulate their cause. So this is all the training that they're getting along with financial aid. Prosthetics and disabilities that many young people, as a result of war, as a result of other situations, have either lost arm or a leg or basically are disabled. So we want to integrate them into the society, integrate them into the education system. That's a second program. Third thing is psychosocial counseling. I mean, I've met students from Gaza, and there's hardly anyone who doesn't have a story to tell. Is their father's dead, they saw their mother being killed in front of their eyes, their brother died, their house was demolished. This whole thing, even if you go beyond Operation Cast Lead, the occupation has resulted in severe psychological stress for young people. That's the third area for us. And fourth is reconstruction of institutes that were destroyed during war. Now, what we've also done is when we initiated this program, we invited students from Gaza as well as from UK, US, Germany, other European countries to come to Doha to meet one another. This is an initiative that was launched, was extremely successful. We were able to bring 13 students from Gaza, which was next to impossible, but we were able to do that. Within Gaza, there's all kinds of programs. You know, currently we have 215 students that are the recipients of the Fakhoora Scholarship Program. There's activities for them. They go through different training programs. Every week, we have a link up with these students where they talk to other students in the US as well as in the UK and talk about, you know, issues of occupation, issues of what they're living through, to really be able to make their case understood to other people. So these are basically just different events. Now, another thing which is important to talk about here is the blockade. This blockade has been implemented on Gaza, which has been there for over 5 years. Last year, there was a Freedom Flotilla that was organized by 22 countries, had participants from 700 countries, not governmental organizations, but primarily nonprofit organizations, activist groups. And Fakhoora also participated in this initiative because it was really geared towards action, towards lifting the blockade in a peaceful manner. What followed was obviously something that nobody had thought would happen, or we hadn't anticipated the result of you know, what came out to be. So for as Fakhoora, I personally participated with this. I was carrying with me 65 computers, and there was other relief items that were being transported as part of the flotilla, which included notebooks, toys, medical supplies, books, and wheelchairs. So basically, we set out to be part of an international initiative, and what I will not go into details as to what happened and how it happened, but basically, as what happened in sort of a nutshell, that we were basically attacked by Israeli forces, and as a result, 55 people were injured and 9 of them were killed. And that experience by itself made me realize to be part of this initiative is what do Palestinians go through every day, day in and day out. To be humiliated by a teenager soldier, or to be humiliated by young people, that's something I experienced. To be tortured for 2 days, emotionally and physically, that made me realize is what do young people in Palestine go through. Now, one of the things that I like to talk about is there was a young man by the name of Furqan Dogan who was with us, and I would just like to sum up his story very quickly. Furqan Dogan was the youngest of the participant in the Freedom Flotilla, and he was killed. He was 19 years of age. Now, Furqan Dogan wanted to be a doctor when he grew up, or when he was about to finish his high school. So one of the things to pay tribute to Furqan, what we've done is we've named our scholarship program after him, our medical scholarship program. So that scholarship program now is called Furqan Dogan Scholarship for Medicine. So that's in memory of him. I would like to conclude by saying one thing, and that kind of sums up the mission of Fakhoora. Basically, when we were approaching Gaza, we were 100 kilometers from Gaza, and when we were approached by Israeli forces, one of the signals that they sent out was, what is your destination? Or what is your course? And this is a very famous line that one of the captains from the Greek ships responded and said, our destination is the conscience of humanity. And that is what Fakhoora is about. Thank you.